Hi guys, this is Dr. Divya Pradhan once again, and today we are here to talk about evolution of major groups of plants. First and foremost, what are plants? All right. Well, plants are multicellular, you understand that, photosynthetic eukaryote. Multicellular, many-celled, photosynthetic, obviously you understand, capable of converting or trapping solar energy to convert carbon dioxide into carbohydrate or glucose molecules or carb molecules. Eukaryote, U means true, karyon means nucleus, that means they have a well-defined nucleus. That nucleus has a membrane called the nuclear membrane. So what we are saying is the plants evolved from green algae. So the algae, the green algae, they both have, the plants and the green algae have very plant-like characteristics. And what are the plant-like characteristics? Of course, you need to understand that algae are very primitive. They do not have what you would call tissues. So think of poriferans that you have just finished. Remember, like poriferans, algae are just a group of cells that are living together and in a colony, not organized in tissues and organs or systems. Okay, so the plants have evolved from freshwater green algae, and what are the similar characteristics of the algal as well as the plant groups? Well, they both contain chlorophyll. So what are the characteristics? They both contain the pigment chlorophyll. That is A and B. Okay, you should have covered this in 103. They store excess carb as starch. So they store food in the form of starch. And they have cellulose in the cell wall. So their cell wall is made up of a complex carb, and that's called cellulose. Okay. All right, so here are the evolution of plants, and as you can see that here are the primitive algal components, and then finally we have the embryo production. So we have the liverworts, the hornworts, the mosses. Then we have more advancement. We have something called the apical growth. Obviously that means they have meristems, which is capable of allowing apical growth. We have vascular tissues, that means we have the xylem and the phloem. And then we have microphyls. The microphyls are leaf-like structures, very primitive leaf-like structures, so obviously we come to ferns. And then we have seeds, in which we have gymnosperms, and then we have flowers, endosperm, fruit, double fertilization, we have flowering plants. All right, we'll talk about all this in detail, don't worry too much about it yet. Plants have something very unique, which is above the algal ancestors. What is that? They have two multicellular individual alternates. The regular alternation of forms or mode of reproduction in the life cycle of an organism, such as alternation between diploid and haploid, or sexual, this is sexual, asexual, this alteration is called alternation of generation. Simpler words, two multicellular individual alternate, each producing what? First a sporophyte and then a gametophyte. So sporophyte is diploid. 2N means diploid. Diploid means it has two sets of chromosomes. Okay, so like us, you have chromosome A from a father and chromosome A prime from a mother, B from a father, B prime from a mother. So each chromosome is represented twice. Gametophyte are haploid. That means they have only one set of chromosome N. All right. So the sporophyte, of course, produces spores. Look, the sporophyte in a sporangium, which is a special case, it is going to produce spores. So a spore is a haploid reproductive cell, and this will develop into a new organism without needing to fuse with another reproductive cell. So this undergoes mitosis, and this becomes a gametophyte. Now the gametophyte This is haploid generation. It produces what? It produces gametes. So it produces, in our case, like for example, the egg and the sperm. Egg and the sperm, I will use these terms also in plants. And the eggs and the sperms are produced. They will fertilize N, and N will become 2N, which is a zygote, which is a diploid. The diploid will multiply by mitosis and will form a group of cells which will produce the sporophyte. All right. So this is the simple alteration of generation. Now here, the plants differ from each other by what? Which generation is dominant? Is the gametophyte more dominant or the sporophyte more dominant? Now, sporophyte dominance, obviously you're understanding, this is adaptive to dry land. All right. So this sporophyte will naturally have complex structures, vascular tissues, and as in evolution, you will see in the next slide, right here, you are seeing that as we are moving on, the gametophyte is going to become smaller and smaller, and the sporophyte is going to become bigger and bigger. So this is sporophyte, again, dominance is associated with adaptation for reproduction in a dry terrestrial environment. That's how they conquered land. So we first see the mosses in which the gametophyte is dominant, and then we see ferns in which the sporophyte obviously has become dominant. These are seedless. So let's once again, we'll go on. We'll talk about this later on as we go on. Now, one thing that will allow the sporophytes to become dominant are a couple of structures. So the sporophytes here are going to write out here. Oops, excuse me. The sporophytes have a cuticle. So this impermeable layer provides a barrier for water loss, and also, but however, it limits gas exchange. So now what happens is the leaves are going to have holes, and these holes are called stomata. We are going to study that later. Okay. Actually, you should have covered that in 103. Excuse me. So through which gases come in and out through these openings are holes called stomata. All right. So as we go on, like I said, the ferns, these are seedless vascular plants. So you are going to be seeing xylem and phloem, the two tissues which allow the transport of water. The water-dependent gametophyte makes it more and more difficult for the ferns to survive on land. And then as we go on, you're noticing that the gametophyte is becoming smaller and smaller. In flowering plants are seed plants with dominant sporophyte. The reproductive structures are protected from drying out, and the sporophyte is represented by a very, very short, small stage. We'll talk about it later on. Okay. So the first group that we are going to see are the bryophytes. So the bryophyta, they protect the embryo and they have apical growth. So these are the hornworts, the liverworts, the mosses. These are the familiar small green leafy moss plants that we know of. This haploid, so here what happens is the dominant is, remember I told you the dominant is a gametophyte, remember, and a gametophyte will produce gametes, okay? So the haploid multicellular phase is dominant in the moss life. So these are the first plants to colonize the land. They protect their embryo, I told you that, and they produce wind-blown spores. But what do they not have? So they definitely have the protect, but what is the primitive characteristic? So of course, one is that the gametophyte is dominant. Two, they have no true, remember I said true. So roots, they don't have true leaves, they have leaf-like structure, stem-like structure, root-like structure. They don't have true roots, leaf, or they have no true stem. The key word is true, all right? And of course, they have no vascular tissues, and that I'm talking about vascular tissues, I'm talking about xylem and phloem, okay? These are the two vascular tissues. So what are the characteristics? Well, let's look at the life cycle. The life cycle, gametophyte is dominant, and here the shoots produce the antheridia, which is the male reproductive structure, and an archegonia, female reproductive structure. The sperms in the antheridia, the sperms mature, the sperms are liberated, they will swim. Remember, swim means presence of external water. Moss cannot live on dry land. Will swim to the archegonia, fertilize the egg. N will produce a zygote, which is diploid 2N. That means the diploid stage has started. And the zygote will now form a sporophyte. The sporophyte has three parts: a foot, a stalk, as well as a sporangium. The sporangium is actually called a capsule in this case. The capsule, as it matures, the cap is liberated, and through meiosis, reduction, division, the diploid is going to form and is going to reduce from two sets. One set of chromosome is going to form spores. The spores are windblown. They are going to go places, wherever they land, wherever they will find favorable conditions, they are going to germinate and form the next set of gametophytes, and therefore the alternation of generation, the cycle will continue. All right. The lycophytes are more advanced. Why? Do you see something that the mosses did not have? They have vascular tissues. That means they have xylem, and then they have phloem. Okay, these are the vascular tissues. Xylem transports water. Phloem transports food. Okay. So the lycophytes, there are three groups. There are the ground pines or the lycopodium, the spike mosses or the selaginella, or the quillworts is the isoites. One more thing that I had to tell you was that the Cooksonia were the first group of vascular plants that actually were there. They existed long back in the Silurian period. But of course, what is the primitive feature? The primitive feature, once again, is that they have no roots. They have no roots. They have no stem. And I'm talking about true stem. And of course, they have no true leaf. All right. So I guess with this, we come to the end of our presentation. And if there are any questions or concerns, please stop by my office. I thank you for listening to me. And I will continue this presentation in the next presentation.